Welcome to the Writer's Block. I'm Todd. We have HD Andy with us yet again. Uh, and we're talking about stuff with writing. And yeah, writing. Anyways, before we get into that, a couple of announcements. If you're still watching, you haven't already clicked away, we will not have episodes for the next 2 weeks. So on March 25th and April 1st, we won't have any videos. Probably. But yeah, most likely not. Anyways, uh, so feel free to rewatch one of the old ones, maybe we'll do like some kind of like compilation or something like that, and I'll release that.
Best moments.
Yeah. Best moments of the After Dark episodes. Featuring intermittent episodes or intermittent parts of, you know, no longer HD Andy doing what is that whispering in the microphone thing?
Oh, ASMR.
ASMR, yeah. Yeah, that's maybe not. I don't know if anyone would want that. But anyways,
Just
yeah.
a constant loop. It's a 10-hour loop of just you and I doing that intro when we did the first After Dark episode.
Maybe I'll do that. I could make a 10-hour video of that. My computer would probably combust, but I might still do that. Okay, well, keep your eyes posted. Or your ears posted, because this is also a audio formatted podcast. But yeah, so Andy, would you like to tell us the topic for today's writing block?
So
I don't always think of the actual sentence before I start talking. I just start spitting out words, and
spewing out.
Yeah, and then things just become a blur, So yeah, do tell us.
All right. So today I came up with the idea to talk about the most cliche character that we have come up with in our story and have created, and then our most most unique character that we've ever created and put it in a story. So something a little bit different. I know we've gone over cliche episode. We had a whole episode dedicated to cliches, I believe, or at least half an episode. I was in our early days.
I mean, probably, yeah.
But his memory is not what it used to be, as he reminds us every week.
Yeah, true. Now my computer's making a buzzing noise, so I just kind of gave it a good firm kick. Okay. But yes, we do talk about cliche stuff. Yeah. In fact, the fact that we talk about it so much is becoming a cliche. But anyway, continue.
So, for me personally, the most cliche character that I have come up with by far is probably my main character in my novel. He's, yeah. I mean, he's the most. I'm trying to think of the words. He's the character that I've based off myself the most by far. 100%. He's tall, built, tan, Italian. I mean, you can't. How much more can you writing's on the wall here? And then he moves to a small town. He's obviously assertive because he's chief of police, but he's also down to earth, quiet. Mostly reserved when he doesn't have to be assertive and all that, and has a cat. So if you can't get any more cliche than that, I don't know. I don't know what you can do. He doesn't have any real issues. There's no personal life background, which I don't know if that part is really cliche, but I mean, definitely you should have, when building characters, for all you young writers out there, their backstory there should be a problem. So it's more interesting for character building and everything. As if he's just clean cut, had a great family upbringing and nothing ever bad ever happened. It's what kind of story is that to tell? It's not very interesting. Even for me personally, don't you think?
Yeah. So what? But did you say that does your character have a flaw? Or
as of right now, no. But I need to I haven't really worked on it. I need to have a better flaw as before. I mean, his one flaw could be rambling like I'm currently doing, or have a lisp every once in a while. But I mean, a major flaw.
Persistent stutter.
Persistent stutter.
I mean, yeah.
Hands in the air.
I mean,
just stuck on repeat.
Yeah, it could. I mean,
that would be interesting.
It would be interesting.
But I mean,
change a few things.
There would be, I guess technically there would be a flaw in the next book if I ever get to that far. But I'm not going to spoil anything. But I think from all the writing that I've done, I feel like that's the most cliche like character that I have come up with. I mean, unless you can think of one of the writings that you've read of mine, something different, because you have a pretty firm grasp of what this main character is, like the chief of police. Like I've explained it to you a bunch when we've gone over, I mean, my storyline and plot and everything. So I feel like that's definitely.
Yeah, the character definitely it's definitely kind of like a Italian Rambo with who has a cat. Kind of yeah.
I mean, is it Rambo Italian? Because it's Sylvester Stallone.
Well, Sylvester Stallone's Italian, but is Rambo himself, the character of Rambo, is he Italian?
Is he? I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, could you make the assumption that he is?
No, never assume anything.
No,
Mr. HD Andy. You should always do the research. But yeah, I mean, I concur with your assessment.
Well, that's good. So now that we have figured out that this character that no one has read about other than, or discussed other than me and you is the most cliche person I've ever read or written or created, what would you say your most cliche would be?
The first one that comes to mind is a character in this wonderful book right here called Fairly Human. Okay. God, what are the odds I can open up a page with this guy? The character I'm thinking of is, I don't remember his name. Okay. Let me just find him very quickly. He's an old guy, okay? He lives in a small town in Florida, okay? So in this part of the book, the family has escaped St. Pete and they're in a town called Winter Haven. And they're looking for a place to stay at because, obviously their home is gone and they kind of need a place to sleep. So they're searching through this, small town trying to find a place. And they walk into, they walk into a home that I think they thought was abandoned or, yeah, here we go. They thought it was abandoned. And then it turns out that it's not abandoned. There's a guy there. God, I just want to find it. Okay, the guy's name is Clyde Bundy. All right.
Clyde is the most. I feel like that's one of the most cliche first names for an old person.
It is
come up with.
It's not cliche because he's old. It's cliche because he's basically a stereotypical conservative old white dude who, it's almost laughably stereotypical, and it's not cliche. I feel like it's kind of cliche in a way, but it's the family walks up to this house, and I guess I just assume that it's empty. They walk in, and this guy Clyde, he's like, not one more step, pal. Points the shotgun at them, and he's like warning them, I could kill you and claim self-defense. Basically very, in that kind of that kind of.
That's a very Florida sentence. It's a very, very Florida sentence right there.
Yeah. And he's the name's Clyde Bundy. I got room here. If you don't mind the clutter, you may have heard of me from the radio program I'm on, the Outspoken Christian and Conservative Forum. I mean, it's very, when you think of that kind of person, it's too stereotypical. It's almost laughable. Yo, come on in. Really funny. Honestly, this is one of the favorite parts of this book. They let this guy, he's kind of antagonistic, but he lets them in. And, he's like, 3 kids, that's it, because, they should have more kids, stuff like that. And Clyde walked toward the bathroom, ending the awkward conversation. House was in disarray. The scent of tobacco was in the air. And then Clyde starts dry heaving in the bathroom. It's just, whenever I think about it, it's just funny. They quietly vacated the house and continued their search. Oh, man, it is. I don't know.
Funny.
He was just I don't want to say a throwaway character, but he's essentially a throwaway character that was only existed on 2 pages of this book. But you know, the character himself, he's not very well written. He's just a copy and paste, conservative Christian old dude from Florida, and that's about it. Who dry heaves in the bathroom for some reason. I still don't remember that one.
Would you consider mine not very well written because it's cliched, like a cliched character that I've created?
So I guess when I say it's not well written, I should say that it's not well developed. And that, I mean, it would be up to you to say that, but maybe it could be the same category. Developed as in like he doesn't have an actual, like the most backstory I did on him was making him the creator of the outspoken Christian and conservative forum, on AM radio, because I don't know if you listen to AM radio, but it's basically
static.
That's a little bit static, and then conservative and Christian forum. It's big talk show stuff, specifically conservative stuff. I should say, but so that's the most development I did on him. But like I never intended for Clyde Bundy to be a big character, so it kind of worked out pretty well. I feel like he's not a notable character, so him being kind of cliche.
Yeah,
it's, if anything, it's a little laugh in the middle of a really kind of not. I don't want to say it's a sad book, but it's a lot of death in this book.
Morbid, would you say?
I guess morbid. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, spoiler alert, but like a lot of people die in this book. Not just civilians that aren't even named, but like main characters in the book. Like a lot of them die. I will say I was partly inspired by Game of Thrones to not treat characters, even the ones that I liked, with any special regard. All the characters in the book had to be in a position to die if the story called for it. And,
I didn't know Game of Thrones did that, thought of that. I've never seen it or read it. So
great TV series, I feel like. I'm not sure if it's a great book series. I'm sure it is. I haven't read it yet. But for the TV series, the first season, the main character everyone thought was what's his name? I think his name is Sean something. He was the bad guy in Clear and Present Danger. What was his name?
Sean Penn?
No. I guess I could just do a quick Google search because that's what it's here for. Sean Connery. I don't think it was him.
I don't think it was Sean. Yeah.
His name might not actually be Sean, to be honest. But I will find out in a moment. Anyways, everyone thought he was the main character. And then he died. Sean Bean. Yeah, everyone's favorite Irishman, Sean Bean. I think he's Irish. Yeah, everyone thought he was the main character. Gets beheaded. Spoiler alert. A little late for that one, but that kind of set the tone for no one was safe. And boy, was nobody safe in that TV series. But that would be my most cliche character, I guess. And because I'll pass the mic back to you.
Well, that's a very good character to have. Like, I didn't even think of and it's not even the best thing is that he doesn't play a really pivotal role. Like, that's the only 5 pages. How many pages does he show up in? Like 2. Okay, 2. If you're gonna create a cliche character, I think that's how you want to have it. It's just 2 in and out. That's it.
Yeah, I agree. This chapter was honestly so much fun thinking back to it. Because like that chapter was just like probably don't actually need to keep it in the book, if I'm being honest. But like, they go to that guy's house. It's it's got the old guy in it, and then they end up finding. Actually, right before they go to the old guy's house, they actually found a place, and they kind of started settling in, but it had been abandoned for a long time. And it's a part where the main character Frank and his wife, they lay down on the bed and they look up and they see that like a good section of the ceiling's missing, and then or it's like it's kind of like not in the best shape, and he grabs this like nearby cane and he pokes it, and then the ceiling just starts collapsing in on themselves. Yeah, he's like, termites beat us to this house, I think, and then they run off to Clyde Bundy's house. And they hear him dry heaving in the bathroom. It's honest. There's a fun story or a fun chapter in a pretty. Yeah, I mean, okay, maybe this isn't a fun chapter. Right after they leave Clyde's house, they come across the woman that the main character cheated on his wife with. So it gets kind of spicy pretty quick, But yeah,
this book has everything.
It really does. Like, this is still my most crowning achievement. Crowning achievement, is that the right phrase? Crowning?
Yeah, I think so.
Sometimes I say things and it just doesn't make sense. What? I blame the brain tumor, but which I'm, more and more certain that it is actually real, because it's kind of, making me scared. But yeah, again, I'm going to pass the mic back to you.
All right, so I guess the second part was the most unique character. I'm going to let you go first on this one that you've ever created, because I have to think about this, because I don't know if I need to go off of my short stories that I've created, or my novel that is such a side note right now. It's pathetic.
Fair enough. Well, gonna take some water because this is gonna be quite a rambling moment.
Okay.
So when I think of the most creative or the most unique character that I've written, I kind of had to, I had to think about this on short notice, but I don't think any character in that book was any more unique, nor any of my other books, was more unique than the main character Eve Harlow that I wrote in my soon to be released story, The Sound of Silence. I've talked about that book and her a little bit on this program, but part of what makes her unique is more so at least than other characters I've written, is her character development. I feel like, because she is, she's like 21 years old, lives in a really small town. It's a very religious town, very conservative family, like ultra conservative, and she's trying to find meaning in the world around her. She's trying to find a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging, and she ends up finding it with God. And she has this kind of like religious sort of moment where she actually, she hears God's voice. And I mean, want to preface this by saying it's a horror story. A lot of dark things happen. I mean, not murder, I guess, killing, death, but nothing too much beyond that, I guess. Yeah, so she finds this kind of, and there's also flashbacks. I should note that too. Each chapter starts with, and if you've read on my website, there's I had the first 3 chapters available to read. Each chapter starts off with a short conversation between Eve and her psychiatrist or therapist from the year 1994. At that point, she's institutionalized, but the book itself takes place over the course of late 1986, early 1987. And so during this time period, she's trying to find answers, really trying to find answers. She's almost, she's defiantly trying to find answers, against her parents' wishes. She goes and speaks to pastors. I'll be honest with you, I know not all churches consider their, speakers to be priests or pastors. I don't actually know the specific terminology for each institution, but And I don't think actually, yeah.
This the Catholic is priest, and then Christian religion is pastor. That's all I know.
Like
And then
Protestants.
yeah, or yeah,
So I guess, yeah,
Presbyterian, which I was, or which I am denoted as Presbyterian. So that's a pastor. But there's also a. I had the word before you said
minister.
something. Minister. That's another one that you can use in the Christian faith. And then just I think just speaker is
Yeah.
another one too, or you know. So
Yeah.
all right, continue. I just wanted to see if that says. Sorry. Side note. Continue.
This particular religion that her parents and that most of the town was a part of was as a God, I don't remember the exact name. It was an older religion. I mean, it's Protestant, but there's hundreds of Protestant religions. It was this particular group. They spoke the word of God, or they spoke in the language of God, which is tongues. So like they would be in church. There'd be a sermon going on, or the minister, whatever they call it, would be giving his. I actually did a pretty decent amount of research on like specific texts from the Bible to include here and that they reference throughout the book, and so that was kind of interesting. But he would start the sermon, he would be talking, he'd get really into it, really passionate, and then like there's one specific scene in the beginning where the very front rows of the church, they start speaking in tongues, they start making noises essentially, which is honest. I've always thought it was a fascinating part of this particular religion, because I don't fully understand it, and I mean I think I understand it, but I don't know if that makes it better or worse. But anyways, so in this particular scene, they're starting their tongue talking in the front, and it just kind of like rushes back towards Eve, and she's in the back with her family, and it's like it's a very important moment for her, because she wants to speak in the same language, but when all the stuff comes to her, she can't really. She doesn't talk. She doesn't speak the same way that everyone else does. She doesn't understand it. Doesn't understand why. And so the questions keep coming back to her, like why can't I speak in God's language? Why can't I take part in these church activities? And she asks her father, and her father's like, you're not pure enough. You have too many impurities. Cleanse yourself and purify yourself of whatever's stopping you from doing this. And and then again, time comes, you still can't speak, and a lot of bad stuff happens. But part of what happens is she keeps trying to build a lot of communication with God, and that's kind of why I think she's such a unique character, because like she ends up having an actual dialogue with God. At least she thinks she does. Throughout, after like chapter 5 or 6, she makes contact, and there's a regular communication, and there's certain commands that are issued, like you got to save this person, or you got to do this or that. It's probably considered blasphemous by some critiques, but her character is just a fascinating character, and fascinating character.
Well, I don't want you to give too much away, because this sounds like it's going to be your next. Well, it's not this one. It's a third best-selling novel that you're going to have. The second one is going to be the sequel to that, right?
Well, so
Is that what the timeline was?
The current plan, the next book I'm going to release is still Fairly Human 3.
Three. That's right. I forgot number 2 is the novella.
Yeah, number 2 is like the stepchild that should have just been an afterward section or something. What an epilogue. It should have just been an epilogue of the first book. Oh well, is what it is. Fairly Human 3 will come out. This particular book, Sound of Silence, I originally wanted to make it a full-length novel. I've mentioned that multiple times. I may have also mentioned that it has a lot in common with a book called Carrie, which I was going to grab, but I don't know where it's at. Carrie by Stephen King. A lot of similarities. Would have required some extensive rewrites, because there's a lot of similarities, a lot of differences, though. I ended up not changing a whole lot. I don't know how long the book is. I don't know how long The Sound of Silence is. It's maybe I think it's less than 20,000 words, to be honest. It's going to actually be included in a compilation of short stories that I have that'll be coming out later this year as well, um, which I will certainly announce on this platform. But that'll be part of a series called More Than a Few Stories. It's going to have a bunch of stuff like old writings I had that are old short stories that were like based off of Law and Order. It'll have a bunch of short stories, page long. It'll have some 5 or 6 pages long. It'll include some utopian works and some dystopian works, some sad stuff. But most importantly, it'll include The Sound of Silence. But I'll probably end up releasing the whole thing for free at some point on my website, probably. But although I do have ideas for a sequel to it, and the ideas for the sequel to this Sound of Silence would be a lot easier to write, I think, because obviously Carrie doesn't have a sequel, and the proposed sequel that I have for The Sound of Silence it would draw a lot of inspiration from some of the events that happened in Waco, Texas. If you know about that, there was a religious compound out there. They called themselves the Branch Davidians or something like that. It's basically a very niche cult, whatever. Yeah, then I think it was the ATF tried to move in and take the place over, and then the whole place burned down and everyone died. But anyways, the idea of this sort of like cult group in the middle of nowhere that's self-sufficient, I thought was kind of interesting. And yeah, but that's a potential sequel. I can't guarantee I'm ever going to write it, but it's a sequel idea that I wrote down 3 years ago, and I originally wanted to write, The Sound of Silence, originally titled Eve. Fun fact, after the name of the main character, who her name in of itself is also obviously. It's what?
I said it has a religious undertone to it.
Yeah, no, yeah, yeah. Thought it was so kind of hidden,
Yeah, I'm so smart. But I guess.
Well, here's a question: do you know where the current title, "The Sound of Silence," you know where that comes from?
No.
It's an old song from, I guess, Simon Garfunkel and somebody else. Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Oh, that's right. You told me this.
There's
about that.
I don't know what it was about that song. Kind of stuck with me. I think part of the idea was, "Hello, darkness, my old friend." God, I don't remember. There's something in the song that made me think it was a good idea as a title, but I haven't listened to the song in a while, so can't really comment on that. So I guess I'll pop the question back to you, Mr. H.D. Andy. What unique character have you written?
I would say all my short stories, like this could be really, I could be pulling, stuff out of my butt for this, but it's all the short stories in my time series that is in second person. Because it's unique, because it's technically you. Am I pull a rabbit out of a hat here? Like, is that, because I can't think if I really have. I know I came up with the question prompt myself, and now that I think of it more and more, I don't have really any unique. No one really sticks out that I can think of in my short stories. Maybe my newest one, Smokey the Cat. I don't know if you've read that or not.
I have not.
Okay.
I didn't realize it was out. I mean, I guess I should have realized it was out. It was, it's the last episode that it was releasing this past week, I think.
It released the 6th. What is today?
At 11th? Yeah.
Yeah.
3/11.
Yeah. So anyway, but it would either be him and that's not really unique. I mean, he's got a unique storyline. Well, it's not really even a unique storyline, but he has a unique presence within the story. But I would say within my time series, all the ones that are in second person, and I can't even give you details as to why I think that, only other than the fact that it's the reader who is like in the moment, supposed to feel in the moment that they're actually talking about like themselves within the story. So I don't have anything. I mean, I don't know how unique, like in Rue, that is brought up 4,000 times, you know, in this podcast. That's a normal, not a normal, but it's not a very unique storyline because it happens all the time. Not the finding the dog part, but a high school kid going home and killing themselves happens, far too often,
Jinkies.
But or the thought of it anyway.
Yeah, certainly.
I mean, the old people who live in the Adirondacks all year round, they want to get stomach cancer. Okay, that happens to anybody. You're driving to get ice cream and your sister gets killed dies at the end of after getting killed in a car crash. You ever read that one?
I don't think so.
Oh, spoiler alert. That was my second ever release on my website.
A lot of positive energy here.
Yeah.
But I definitely.
And then having the sequel to Remembrance, which Remembrance was my first ever release. And then I don't remember the title of that, the sequel to that. The famous author doesn't get he runs into the girl that he fell in love with, who was his old neighbor, but she's married and has a kid, has a family. So he tells her he has to go be with them, even though they really do like each other. And then he gets drunk and he gets arrested. I mean, that's not very unique. I'm giving away all my stories right here and there, so no one ever has to visit my website. You're welcome.
Yeah. I mean, shoot.
But I mean, I have more in there that I can't think of. But I would have to say, and it's not very unique at all, is all the short stories that are in second person within that time series. Would you not agree? I mean, you've read some of my work.
Yeah, I mean, I think the second person character is definitely pretty unique. I mean, because it's not just a second person character, it kind of goes back and forth, and that same character also, you see that character in I would say dream states that are not reality.
A couple different states of mind as he evolves or devolves, or it's at least the story evolves more.
Yeah. So definitely there's some good stuff in there. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty neat character.
Well, I guess I have a short story in mind that I kind of started would be even more unique now, I guess, if you think about it from the perspective. But I'm not going to divulge that in case it actually turns into an actual short story. But that second parter is actually harder than I thought it was going to be for that question. I don't really have unique characters. I don't think I really have ideas outside my little frame of mind. It's either happy sort of, or just, reality of sadness and despair or whatever else.
Yeah. Also, there's a question of what defines a unique character. Because I've got, I have a 5-part series that it's all released on my website that it's basically a dystopian series. The world's kind of at a crossroads where direct radical change needs to happen in order to save humanity. Otherwise, humanity just goes up a cliff. And each of the 5 stories, 2 of them are from the perspective of the same person, and this person is trying to advocate for a whole new society that's more more I guess environmentally sustainable, because that's a big part of it. And then there's economic equity and all this stuff. And the whole idea actually came from a school related project I had to do. And the character, the character doesn't have a name. They're just a person, and you hear their direct opinion on the thing of what needs to be done, and they reference philosophers from the 1700s, 1800s, Rousseau and yada yada. I can't remember anyone else, but then he comes back because the council who's talking to they listen to another guy who's like, hey, just rather than just doing all the hard stuff of reconstructing the way that we live. Let's just try this easier option that will probably work. And naturally, they go for the easier option because it's easier. And the first guy comes back and says, "Hey, if that messes up and fails, it will be equivalent to dooming humanity." And he kind of goes off on the council for being, somewhat corrupt and for not having the most impartial takes or opinions, whatever. And then, in the fourth story, we learned that they went with the cheap option and it failed miserably. It failed like in ways that I think outperformed the worst expectations. And essentially, what you see over the last couple stories is this. It's like you see how humanity changes, I guess, in the response to the horrible things that have happened after falling off of that, cliff, so to speak. And it's not like entirely like it's obviously it ends on kind of a dark note, but there's a little glimmer of hope. Like the very last few lines of the very last story are, in the face of such hopelessness, there's this little glimmer of optimism, which is, probably not what you would expect in a dystopian series. Certainly don't see that in 1984, but it's it was a neat series. It was a unique series, I think. But I don't know. I don't know if the character's all that unique or cliche. They're just kind of
Yeah.
the character doesn't exist for any other purpose than to kind of present a narrative or an idea to the board of delegates or whatever. A delegation, I think, is what I call it. But yeah, I don't know. It's one of the cool things I've released recently. I'll
It's
have
just,
more of that coming too.
and part of me thinks like if you don't branch, like we've talked about this before, but if you don't branch off into a story or storylines or ideas that out of your comfort zone, like for you, it's science, political, story based, like based stories, and then mine are more trying to, do what's right or with the time, like trying to win something back that you had lost, or just other short stories that don't end very happily. And then with bigger projects like writing crime fiction, you can't really create something new and unique because you're not expanding your storylines or ideas, I guess, in a sense. I mean, yeah, the newest unique thing I ever did was write almost the whole series in second person, but it revolved around something I've talked about, like a similar like mood I've written before. Wasn't new. It was just something that I was, used to or accustomed and was comfortable writing about. So I guess taking the uniqueness, not even a character, it's more broadly like as a story, like I've said, a story is. I'm rambling here, but like not just a character, but having a unique story will actually oversee helping like having a unique character. I guess is what I'm trying to say after rambling for 5 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, it depends. I guess like sometimes like some stories are very character driven and some stories are just story driven. So story driven projects, the character is probably going to fall like, they're not going to probably be that unique or that important. They'll just be kind of a, I don't know, formality, I guess, in some kind of way. And so and that's how I see my dystopian short series. Like the characters they're just a delivery mechanism. And so it's not really anything, I guess. But like for the time series, that one's a lot more character driven of a story. So there's a lot more uniqueness, a lot more development that goes on there. So
It could be more development. Really, if you really nitpick things, there definitely could be room for improvement, but we don't have to get into that.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I hadn't thought about. I mean, with respect to the crime novel, is the the idea that your main character is cliche. I I think in most circumstances you'd want to shy away from cliche characters. Um, 'Cause, I mean, but ideally you want a character that's relatable to as many people as possible. And that's I think where you know certain like tones of empathy, which it sounds like are in the character, kind of help to alleviate that in a way. But yeah, if it's just like Mr. Italy walks in, and I mean it's I don't know. I I don't know if it's necessarily cliche. I don't know
Well,
if it's I don't know if cliche is always a bad thing. I feel like I think it's supposed to be, but sometimes maybe it works. I mean, the one rule of writing is that there are no rules, right? So you got to do what works best for yourself, and then also what you think works best for the story. But
I mean, you also go into the one quote that I always have in my head from my creative nonfiction professor in college that
they're going to mention Gary Paulson again.
oh no, sorry, not Gary Paulson, but what like when he I don't the context was I'll just explain it again for you new listeners if we have any at this point, but he's like if I'm sitting down at a salon, like or someone sitting down in a salon picking up a magazine waiting to get their hair done, what's going to make them stick out, like what's going to make your story stick out from like the 16 other ones that are in the magazine. Like you have to make it unique. It was basically you have to what's going to basically say what's going to make yours stick out from the others. So that's kind of what you were piggybacking on what you just said, like make it unique enough and not have a cliche character to help push the story forward and have a bigger audience, I guess is what I took from it.
Yeah, I think I mean just look, there's a lot of just luck and really really very strenuous work in terms of trying to get published, like the amount of work that's necessary. We still have to do an episode on that, on the process of getting published from a traditional outlet, or even I mean actually we could even do a walkthrough with Kindle Direct Publishing too. But yeah, it's a lot of work, a lot of time. I mean, some people have been like, yeah, I had to do 16 rewrites before they accepted it. And then before that, it took months just to get an agent to represent them. And so it's a hell of a battle just to be able to be on that magazine to begin with. Is the kind of tough pill to swallow. And so, beyond that, it just gets more difficult. But I would say just being on the magazine to begin with is it's a win. It's a big win. I don't know, but
means we got to start entering our works in a contest a little bit more than we do. That could be another episode too. People watching us actually do it. We've spoke about, at least I have, like 17 different times that I was gonna send my send my writing out to a contest, and I haven't done it.
Yeah, I usually do it a few times a year. I haven't had any luck yet. So what does it tell you about my writing? But at
least you're trying.
Yeah, you did your best, son, but it's not our cup of tea. Anyways, I mean, definitely. It all starts with making people aware of your work.
Yeah.
But the best way to do that is to have a really compelling story and compelling characters that have really complicated backstories or complicated relationships that help drive the story forward. Because that's like the heart of every story is conflict. So just create as much conflict as you can. course, make sure that the conflict makes sense too. Like you don't want ridiculous conflict. Like, oh man, the shopkeeper just wouldn't let me purchase this item, so so I shot them, and like I don't know, like that's not a good example. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but like conflicts should be organic. They should flow with the story. They should pop up when it's appropriate. Shouldn't be forced. I think the big thing is just complexity and organic stories and characters. Believable, relatable. I know all these things. Why haven't I made an award-winning book yet? But anyways, yeah. I guess it's about time to jump off this train. Any parting thoughts before we close up shop for a couple weeks?
Check out my new story called The Window Shopper. It is out on my website, which I can never give you the actual URL. Just type in my name, first thing that pops up, the spiel. Maybe in the next 2 weeks, I'll have another one out. I don't know. I have something started, but it's like 3 sentences, so there's no promises there. But it could be a short story. It could be a page or two, like Todd has a couple of those on his website.
Well, most of them are like 4 to 5 pages.
Well, you said you had a couple page or two, so that's what I was kind of like leaning on. But yeah, that 4 to you just had to be like, oh no, I have 4 or 5. I was like, okay.
I was just clarifying. I was looking at my webpage to come with some marketing ideas, and I just happened to catch the end of your sentence there, and I just added on.
Well, I guess we're going to transition over to him now.
If you want to.
You go ahead. I don't have anything else to say other than check out my time series if you have it. I call that the award-winning series that I've created that hasn't won any awards, but
I'll make an award. Good. I'll print out a nice piece of paper that says "Greatest Story Ever" for HD Andy. But so I do have a lot of brief short stories on my website. I want to say so I have a lot of dystopian series. I have a couple different ones. There's the one that I mentioned before, which was, I think it was called Looking Forward Beyond 2049. That's the beginning of the 5-part dystopian series. And it ends with The Dusk of Human Empire, which is another pretty brief short story, which is the resolution to that whole thing. Then there's a 2-parter that comes after that. Starts with The Patriot and the Other, which is it's kind of like, I want to say, if I remember correctly, that short story is basically this speech by you could call him like basically a fascist dictator, something like that. And then the following story is called The Opposition, which is a response. All of that kind of inspired by some political commentary in the real world that I kind of decided to take to the extreme, which sometimes, taking things to the extreme make it easier to see how things might evolve over time, possibly. And then I've got a story called The First Days of War, which was supposed to be a sequel to The Patriot and the Other, but then, invasions happened, and so it's heavily inspired by that a little bit. And then, got a story called Power Play. I really can't remember what it's about, even though I wrote it just a few days ago. It's a horrible affliction I have. It's about a 4-minute read, and it's from the perspective of an opposition member, I guess, to the politics of a one-party state. I wrote this after I finished reading 1984, so there's a lot of similarities there. Anyways, tons of brief 4 or 5 minute reads if you happen to be on the toilet, you need something to do. toddbyron.com. You can find some cool stories there.
Some cool toilet reads.
Yeah, and so fun fact, my previous website, domain company, whatever, so they shut off commentary on my blog posts, which are, updates and short stories. And then the whole program or process just stopped working. So I now have my website connected to a Wix account. So all of my short stories, they appear on my website, but if you click on them, it takes you to Wix, which has the full list of the short stories I have. It doesn't actually show them all on my website anymore. It'll just show like the first 10 and the rest of them, like the older stuff, like the first 3 chapters of The Sound of Silence. If you wanted to read that, you can find it on the Wix website, which you can access through toddbyron.com. Yeah, it's all there. And you can leave comments and tell me if it's great or awful, or if I need to stop writing and get a new career, or you can be like, hey, good job, bud. Not my cup of tea, but it was a cool read. Whatever you want to say hi, say how the kids doing or something. I don't have any kids, but anyways, now I'm rambling. So I'll send it back to HD Andy. Are we done? Is this it?
Yeah, I think I might have to close up shop for a couple weeks now.
Yeah,
Gotta
that
go
sounds
on
about
a mini
right. Well,
vacation.
yeah, what sounds nice right now is going to the beach. Like, God, I live in Florida and I never go to the beach if it's not already obvious by my very pale complexion. Anyways, you know what? I'm gonna go to the beach, even though it's not as sunny out as it is, as it looks in my background, which is actually a real beach somewhere. Anyways, have a good night. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in 2 weeks after our very brief 2-month vacation.